We're just going to wait for a few more sessions, make sure everyone is able to log on. I can see the numbers coming up. Welcome to Norland. Welcome to Norland Unwrapped. We're just going to wait a few more moments to make sure everybody can log on to the system. I can see the numbers going up, so that's a good thing. I'll give it a few more moments. Okay. Let's see where we are. No, they're still coming in. A few more seconds. Brilliant. I think we'll start if that's okay with everybody. So hello and welcome to our second session of Norland Unwrapped. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. It's so lovely that you could be here. Hope you're all staying safe and well. And it's really lovely that you're with us this evening. So just to remind you, my name is Kate Morgan, if you haven't seen me before, and I work in the marketing department. If you've attended our previous Norland Unwrapped session, welcome back. It's lovely to see you again. But if this is your first time joining us, you are really welcome. Lovely to see you. We hope that you enjoy the session. It's a really informal session, a little bit more in a taste of Norland. And we've got some wonderful staff and students that are going to be joining us this evening. So welcome. I'm going to ask Lucy to turn to the next slide, if that's okay. Wonderful. Brilliant. So just some basic housekeeping for you. The session will be actually recorded. So if you have to pop off at any time, you will have access on demand afterwards. So it will be recorded. The camera is off and your microphone is off. So please be assured we can't hear you and we can't see you. So don't worry about that. There will be an opportunity for a Q&A at the end. So you can ask the questions in the normal way via Zoom at the bottom. We'd love your questions. We had lots of questions last time and I know we couldn't get through them all, and we will try and answer them as best as we can for you. If they are specific questions, I will say at the beginning, if there are specific questions about admissions, or whether it's about entry requirements or anything about a particular course that you're thinking of doing, it's probably contacting the admissions department with those specific queries, but we'll try and answer as many as we possibly can this evening for you. So there will be, obviously there's lots of other opportunities to look at our virtual open event recordings as well. So please do have a look on that. It's on our website, norland.ac.uk/events. There's lots and lots of information on there. And the first Norland Unwrapped session is also available on there as well. You can turn the next slide, please, Lucy. Wonderful. Okay, as I said, this is our second Norland Unwrapped session. And this is mainly all about the diploma and the practical skills. So the last session we did was very focused on the Norland degree, and this one is on the other half of our qualification, which is the diploma and the wonderful practical skills that our students experience. So the feedback from the last session was really, really positive. We were really bowled over actually by the positivity and the feedback that we had. So thank you so much for everybody filling in the survey if you attended our last session. And as I said before, it is an opportunity for you to find out a little bit more about us in a more relaxed and informal manner. So there's also opportunities for you to, dictate how you want these sessions to run as well. So if you have any ideas that you think we should cover, or you're not sure about the information, we want to hear from you because it's really important, we are addressing those issues and answering those questions for you. And we would like really to, find out what you want to hear from us. So if you can think about things, you're more than welcome to email me. It's kate.morgan@norland.ac.uk, and we'll also send the feedback survey around as well. So at this point, I'd like to introduce you to our wonderful staff and students. That's Lucy, Lois and Kate. So you can all wave and say hi. Wonderful. And it's a great opportunity to ask them questions as well and find out about all their experiences. And as I mentioned, because obviously at the moment, due to some horrible thing that we've got going around, it's, COVID, etc., we cannot have you back in the college. So the Norland Unwrapped is really bridging the gap between the virtual and our physical open days. So we will hope to run these all the way through the year anyway, because it's obviously been quite popular. And, the next session obviously will be around about Easter time. So like I said, if you've got any questions or queries before that, please let us know. Obviously, there's a series of events we'd like to focus on, then, you know, with regards to what you want us to tell you about. So hopefully we'll have a schedule of the next sessions coming up as well. So with that, I am going to pass over to Lucy, who will give us an overview of the Norland Diploma and tell all about us. Thank you very much.
Hello everyone. To reiterate what Kate was saying there, welcome. I am Lucy Krebs. I'm a senior lecturer here at Norland, and as you can see from the photograph, I'm a Norlander myself. So I studied at Norland between 2003 and 2005. I was one of the first sets to do my full study in Bath, and then I did my probationary year. So I graduated in 2006. So particular highlights of my own training were things like the practical skills, actually, placements, of course, but Norland is definitely where I learned how to sew. I could not sew anything before I came to Norland, and in 2017 I made my own wedding dress. So we do get some skills together. Lois will tell you a bit more about her sewing experience as well later on. After I finished my training, I moved to Horsham in West Sussex to be a live-in nanny for the lovely little girl on the left-hand side there. That's Pops. She was 10 months when I started looking after her. She was 6 months when I went for the interview, and she was just a bold triangle of baby. And then when she was 10 months old, I went to work for them, as I said. And when she went to school, so when she was nearly 5, that's when I came back to Bath. We're still in touch now. She's 16 and very much 16. So with all of the temper and things like that brings, but she's very creative, she's a very lovely person, which is always a nice thing. And she's really into a lot of the same things I am, including really good music, such as the Foo Fighters, which a lot of the students haven't even heard of. So there we go. So yes, Pops was my bridesmaid in 2017 as well, so I'm still very much a part of that family, and we are very close. I'm kind of like a surrogate auntie, if you like, because we're also quite close in age. I was only 19 when I went to Horsham to look after her. I then worked at the Norland Nursery between 2009 and 2013 when the nursery closed, and there I was a practitioner and then a senior practitioner, and I had a key family of around, over the course of that time, probably 50 children, and I'm still in touch with most of those as well. As you can imagine, nannying is very much, it's a brilliant job, of course, and it's something that it really fills your life. And after I looked after Pops, I was like, I don't think I can emotionally invest so much again, which is why I then went to work in the nursery. However, when the nursery closed, I was invited to come and lecture at Norland, and that's where my real passion is now. I love theory, I love teaching. I'm also a student engagement manager, so I'm responsible for taking feedback and ensuring that the students are getting everything that they need from their training. I'm the one who sends most nagging emails, probably, outside of the senior leadership. The students just like politely like, what at all, what are you talking about? But absolutely the case. And we take your feedback very seriously at Norland. So all the students have a right to say whatever they like about their training, in professional and polite way, of course. And we adapt the training to suit our current cohorts as we go through. Right, so it's very adaptable. A lot has changed since I was at Norland, of course, because it's a completely different course. But we're very much changing with the times. Okay, so that's me, and that's how I got, well, that's how I got back here. They can't shake me off. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the Norland Diploma. Oh, the slide's not changing, Kate. There we go. It's just having a bit of a slow day, as we all are, because it's half term. So we have our practical Norland Diploma. As I've already alluded to, we have sewing. And sewing is a fundamental part of the practical skills that we have at Norland, but it's also really helpful for things like well-being, because it's a time to take some time away from screens and to do something a little bit more mindful. There are several projects throughout the year, and most students really enjoy it. When they first come, it can be quite a nerve-wracking experience, especially if you've never sewn before. We also have food and nutrition, which, as you can imagine, is quite important when you're a nanny, knowing what to provide for children, ensuring that we're providing a balanced diet, and also practicing all of those complicated skills. You go from anything from filleting a fish to making pastry. You're going to see some great pictures of food later. It's a good job it's tea time, because you're going to be starving afterwards. And food and nutrition is something that you do right through the 3 years. We have employment training, and that can be things like conflict resolution, as you've probably seen in a lot of the marketing stuff, things like self-defense, all of these kind of things that we kind of roll into your Norland Diploma. We have masterclasses, that's things like nappy changing, topping and tailing, any practical skill that you can imagine you do at Norland, essentially. So a key masterclass that we have is making up a carriage pram. And although many Norlanders don't have carriage prams in their practice, though I did, I was very proud of that. It's still something that we teach our Norland nannies to do. You do first aid, as you would expect. We also do car seat training, which is something I myself deliver. It is more fun than it sounds, I promise. And there's a newly qualified nanny year as well, which is where you go and spend a year in practice, and that can be anywhere in England. All right. We also have a lot of external speakers. So recently we've had an external speaker to come and talk to us about Black Lives Matter. We've also had, can you guys give me some examples of ones you've had recently, Kate and Lois?
I've just had one on food and nutrition. A lady came to talk to us about, she's got a lot of experience in like fussy eating and things like that, and she came to give us a talk on how to do like no pressure at meal times, and how to encourage children to eat that find meal times like really difficult.
Thank you very much. Kate, were you going to speak or?
No, I was just trying to decide. I was trying to figure out which ones we've had and like sort of which ones. I know we've got a sex education one coming up, so that's one to look forward to, whereas we've had quite a few in first year as well, like some safeguarding ones and lots of different skills and knowledgeable people.
Thank you very much, Kate. Also, just to emphasize, the sex education one is about talking to children about sex education as opposed to educating the students. But it's all, we try and cover everything we can possibly need to know for when you go out to practice working in a private home, because of course there's no one to consult when you're a private nanny necessarily. We can come back to Norland, there's a Norland Facebook group, but it's not the same as having, say, colleagues nearby. So that's a sort of brief overview of the diploma. It's doing that hesitancy thing again. One moment, please. Okay, so as you can see, there are these talk diploma units. And for those of you who attended the BA talk, Norland Unwrapped recently, you'll see that they all match up with the degree modules. Okay, so we have safeguarding in practice, supporting PSCD, communication in practice, for example. All of these have got practical skills that you can use in your role as a nanny, but also in settings as well. So for example, in communication in practice, you learn some Makaton, and that's a really fun session where you learn Old MacDonald. That's some of the key basics. The very important one, cake, those kind of things. It's something that I used a lot as a nanny because Pops used to get very frustrated at meal times. So it actually takes the frustration out of some of those things. Although I had lots of signed arguments, so I'd be trying to feed her fish and she'd be going, I was like, no, you're not having cake right now. You're not having cake right now. And then she'd be like, please? It's like, no, it's not because you're not saying please, you're not having cake right now. It's not happening. So these are all really useful skills that you can use pretty much wherever you are. And actually, I've also used things like the signing that I learned at Norland with a parent when I was working at the nursery, because he was profoundly deaf. And although I wasn't fluent, it was really helpful in being able to bridge that communication gap. So that's an example of those practical skills used in practice, as you would imagine. And then going into year 2, we talk about supporting emotional well-being. So that's things like emotion coaching, which you may have heard of. That's a sort of, that's Janet's specialism, our principal. We've also got health and well-being, which is things like hair care, taking care of children when they're poorly, all of those kind of things. Lois and Kate, did you want to add anything before I skip through? No? Fabulous, thank you. And then going into year 3, you've got your leadership in practice and your professional development in practice. Now, I'll tell you a little bit about professional development in practice because that's my favourite one. So on the BA, you create a vlog, which is a video blog, where you reflect on your time at Norland and you essentially look at where you started and how far you've come in that 3 years. And as part of the Norland Diploma, you then start to create your employment portfolio, where you bring together photos from across your training. You look at all your amazing skills that you've developed, and these can be skills that you've learned as part of your training generally, or skills that you've developed yourself. So it's really lovely personal units, and it really shows you and sort of gives you a little bit more confidence. Go, I've come a really long way. And so it's really nice to work on. And then of course we have the employment weeks, which I'm sure you've heard a lot about, which is your final preparation for the NQN post, the newly qualified nanny post. So things like evasive driving, self-defense, first aid, etiquette training from Debrett's, among other things like going through contracts, knowing what to look for, conflict resolution, having difficult conversations, you name it. It's covered in employment weeks, and our NQN team is amazing also at supporting you right through that NQN year. Okay, so enough from me, because actually we all know who you're here to hear from. So I'm going to pass you over to Lois, who is a third year student. Lois.
Hello. As Lucy said, I'm Lois. I'm from Sector 42, so I'm a third year student. A little bit about me. I'm 21 years old. I came to Norland when I was 18. I'd come straight out of a cash level 3 course in early years. So I was already familiar with early years. I had an early years background. I had a little bit of experience. I'm originally from a town near Birmingham. You might hear that in my voice. People find it quite comical. And I'm currently living with a family, not to be confused with my NQN year. I'm living it with a family as opposed to living in a student house at the moment, for financial reasons. I've known I wanted to work with children for a really long time. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew that it was children that I wanted to work with. And then I was actually in musical theatre, and I saw a documentary about Norland, and my parents watched it first, and they said, Lois, this is made for you. This course is made for you. You should watch it. I watched it, and years later now I'm living the dream. I applied to Norland. It was the only university I applied for with really high hopes, and I'm loving every second of it. It's been the fastest 3 years of my life. My dad said something to me about having so many months until I'd finished, and it was something like 33 months from the month I'd started, because I was really worried about leaving home. And I now have about 3 months left. It's literally flown by. Everyone will say to you it flies by, and you won't believe them until you're sat where I'm sitting. I am preparing to go on my NQN year really soon. I'd love to be a nanny for a few years, and then in the long term I'd like to open my own nursery. Norland has already brought me so many opportunities, which includes I had an invite to the most recent royal wedding in 2018, based on getting a place at Norland. My local college really wanted to commend me for my place, and I got a place to go to the royal wedding with my partner. Norland has taken me abroad. I've been asked by a placement family if I could come back and work for them, and go on a family holiday with them and be their support. So that was amazing. And I've made some lifelong relationships with children, particularly the ones I'm currently living with. We've got a really nice bond, and I haven't lost touch with any of the children I've been on placement with yet. So it's really, really, really rewarding going on those placements, seeing all the opportunities, and I haven't even graduated yet. So I'm really looking forward to what Norland has got in store for me for the future, my future career. Next slide, please, Lucy. First thing I'm going to talk to you about is sewing. I could absolutely not sew before I came to Norland. The majority of my first sewing lectures ended in just tears. I have no hand-eye coordination whatsoever, and I was just so desperate to do really well. That bunting that you can see in the top right is my first Norland sewing project. I got a distinction. So I hadn't ever sewn a button. I couldn't even use a sewing machine. I didn't even know how to turn it on when I came to Norland. And Kate, our sewing teacher, Kate Yeager, would tell you I've come a really long way since then. So you can see all of my projects on the screen. So in the first year I did bunting, followed by the child's apron, and in the bottom right, button sewing and some other hand sewing skills. In second year I leveled up and I did a zip bag. That really tested my skill, which is in the bottom left, and the cushion that you can see in the middle with the cloud on it. And then this year I completely did something that I absolutely dreaded when I came to Norland. I was so nervous, knowing I'd got to make a cake and I had zero sewing skills whatsoever. And I produced that cake on my own, hand sewn nonetheless. It's Peter Rabbit, for any of you who are wondering. It's Well Book Day inspired, and it's in the middle column on the far left. And the reason it's hand sewn is due to COVID restrictions. We couldn't use a machine. So previous years have been able to use a machine, come into college, get the support. I was on online lectures and not everybody had a sewing machine. So I sewed that whole thing by hand. It's one of my greatest achievements. And on the far right-hand side in the middle is my latest project, which is a quillo. So it's a blanket that folds into a pillow, and that's what I've just finished. The embroidery on the front was all done by me. So if any of you are watching this and thinking, I really can't sew, that's something I really am not looking forward to, I was you. It was the only thing that I was thinking, I really can't do this about going away to uni. And well, here I am. And I have achieved mostly distinctions in every sewing project. They've been really supportive, wiped my tears for me, and basically held my hand and helped me do all of these projects. And the whole middle row have been completed through a lockdown. So the whole middle row were finished through online lectures. Which I didn't expect any of them to turn out the way they have without having Kate Yeager hold my hand and tell me that I was going to be okay and I was going to do it really well. And yeah, I'm waiting marking for the two either side in the middle. But I'm really, really, really proud of them. So it's just it was one of my biggest challenges, and it's actually one of my biggest triumphs. So if that's something you're worried about, or equally something you're amazing at, then it's not something that you need to be concerned for. There's a lot of support in place for you in terms of sewing, and actually I do really enjoy it now. I've become quite a keen embroiderer. I actually embroider in my spare time, nothing to do with my Norland projects. My parents were very shocked when I invested in an embroidery kit, and I don't think I'm too bad at it. So that's my experience of sewing up until this point. Next slide, please, Lucy. These are all photos I've cooked from my food and nutrition lectures. So everything on the left-hand side has been cooked by me across my 3 years at Norland. Again, I could cook, but I wasn't a confident or avid cook. I'd got a little bit of experience of baking at home. I'd never ever done recipes like these, particularly the pie in the bottom left, the Swiss roll in the middle bottom left, and the sushi, and the profiteroles, I would have never, ever done before I came to Norland. Again, some of these dishes were created on online lectures. So we've been learning about, on the online lecture, we've been going through the recipes with our food and nutrition lecturer, Penny, and she talks us through everything. We go through all the nutritional value for each meal. And then she's there and available in the background, as she would be in a face-to-face lecture, for any support that you'll need. We've done modules over the last 3 years, both in person and online, only during COVID time, of course. We've done basic skills, so learn how to cook an egg, how to cook fish. So if you can only cook toast now, you will also be producing meals like I've produced above. We've done allergies, weaning, home celebration cookery, and preparation for NQN. So the pie is preparation for NQN. My profiteroles is something I've recently done. Very, very proud of those. And the roast dinner. But then things like the meatballs you can see in the top left, the fajitas underneath, and then the bottom right is a chili con carne I made all in my first year. So within a few weeks of being at Norland and learning all the basic skills, I was producing meals like this. And then up to now, you've got things like the sushi, which I did in September. So not long after my second year had finished. And I don't think any of my recipes have been a massive disaster. They don't come out perfect every time. Obviously, I haven't included the photos of the ones that have been not so appetizing to look at, but the support is absolutely always there if you need it. Penny is always there to say well done to you and hold your hand and tell you what you can do to improve, and we always reflecting on the things that we've done. But yes, this is a collection of my best work, so don't come to Norland expecting that you're going to be able to produce amazing things immediately. My very first few lectures certainly didn't look anything like this. but this has just shown like massive growth for me. When I showed my parents the things I've cooked, they're like, wow, we didn't even know that you could cook like this. And now I'm signed up to Sunday dinners most weeks and desserts to follow. So everybody is quite impressed. And I've also gained my level 2 food hygiene through Norland. I did that in my first year. It was an online course that we everybody's completed. So every student in their first year does get the level 2 food hygiene, and we do discuss things like dishwashing, cross-contamination. It's not all just like the fun things, that the making the cakes and putting your own flair on things. We do all of the practical side as well. So we know that when we go into NQN and beyond, we've got some really good basic skills, and we've also got the foundations that we need to be able to grow. I can hope that I will grow even further from now. I definitely use spices a lot more than I used to. My spice vocabulary is growing all the time. So that's my current experience of food and nutrition. This is one of my favourite parts of Norland. It's also really fun to cook in the kitchen alongside your friends. It's an experience I don't think I'd have got at any other university, along with the sewing. It's something that is so unique to here. I don't think I'd have walked away from any other university with these skills, with this to show for it. And now I'm putting my portfolio together. I've got some amazing recipes that I can show families and say, I cooked that. I'm 21 and I cooked those things. I'm really proud of it. Next slide, please, Lucy. The final slide that I'm showing you is the masterclasses. Lucy briefly touched on this earlier. It's where we learn all our practical skills. So you can see me there in the bottom right. I've just done my first nappy fold and trained my first terry towel nappy on a virtual baby, which outside of COVID times are available to take home for 24 hours, which I did with my housemates at the time. You can see pictures of making bottles there, making up the carriage pram, safe seat. These things I've done across the whole 3 years, so we do keep revisiting them. You don't do bottle feeding once and then it's left there. We regularly go back over things, and Elizabeth normally does our masterclasses, and she's really thorough. She makes sure that we've got everything that we need, and if we're unsure on something, there's always resources that she refers us to, and occasionally like a poll. So say you've got a masterclass session coming up, what are you guys struggling with? What do you need to do again? And we'll do it again. So I think I've done bottle feeding probably about 3 times. For me, I was really confident at making up bottle feeds. Some people in my year had never ever made a bottle before, had never ever changed nappy before. So these masterclasses were absolutely essential to them for gaining their basic skills. And then these are usually for 2 or 3 hours a week. So it's a regular amount of contact time that you're getting to practice these skills with your peers as well. Take lots of photos so that you've got them for your portfolio. And then following that, as Lucy mentioned, I am coming up to my employment week. So I'm coming up to being a newly qualified nanny and approaching my graduation as quickly as it's been. And I'll, over the next coming months, so May and June, I will be doing the employment week. So I will be doing the self-defence, I'll be refreshing my paediatric first aid, I'll be doing the etiquette training from the Krebs, water safety, safeguarding, sleep training, baby massage, you name it, we're doing it. Lots and lots of courses to make sure we're completely prepared for NQN. If anybody has any questions and they want to get in touch about this after I've done it, my personal experience, I'm happy for people to get in touch and ask questions about that, because I'm really looking forward to it. It's like the highlight of your 3 years almost, and you see everything come together and you have your final set of practical skills that really make you almost a finished product as an all-in nanny. Before you're going out onto your final probationary NQN year, you have got all of those skills that perhaps the normal nanny or the normal early years practitioner wouldn't have. And I thought I knew a lot about early years before I came to Norland. That's certainly not the case. I am completely enlightened and my eyes are open to the whole world of early years, and I feel like I'm a really well-rounded practitioner because of my experience here, in not only the diploma but in the BA as well. As you'll probably know, they do go hand in hand. So yeah, I'm really grateful for all of the practical skills that I've learned here. Next slide, please, Lucy.
Thank you very much, Lois. That was very comprehensive. You just reminded me that you also do the London orientation in employment weeks as well, which is really fun for the staff because you watch all the students get off in their full formal with their hats on. You just see a tide of hats disappear at the street. It's great. So I'm just going to introduce you to Kate, who is a second year student. So Kate, take it away.
So hello, my name's Kate. I'm in second year, so I'm in Set 43 at the moment. I'm from Hampshire originally, and I was slightly different to Lois, that I came from an A-level background. So I always knew that I wanted to work with children, but I wasn't quite sure what route I wanted to go down. So I did A-levels, as you can see, business media and child psychology. And the lovely thing about coming to Norland is that, you know, everyone comes from all different backgrounds and levels of experience. And coming now halfway through my time at Norland, I feel like it's a nice sort of level field now, that I've been able to gain so much experience. And it was the diploma part of it that really drew me towards Norland. That, you know, through the placements and learning through all the things in the degree, that it provides you with that sort of background knowledge, but the diploma really helps sort of apply that. And I've noticed through different jobs now and in placements, you're like, oh, that's why children are like behaving that way and stuff like that. And it's a really good way of sort of putting it into practice and learning how it is. I'm currently living in a student house with other Norland students. I also live with someone who's at University of Bath. So we sort of have a mix of different people in the house, but it has its different benefits and stuff. But when it comes to assignments and all, it's really nice that we've all got each other and we sort of go around to each other's rooms like, oh, what are you planning? Or like get each other to read it and check through it. So sort of another reason I came to Norland was the sort of unique course structure. So sort of it's so different to any other university, that it's such a small, everyone always describes it as like a family, and it really is, because it sounds so cliche, but because it's so small, I don't know how you feel like, Lois, that everyone sort of knows each other, and because it's a small lecturing base, the lecturers know you more one-to-one, whereas in a university I felt like I'd be sort of just a number, but at Norland it's so special, and then that helps in turn through different things and situations that you feel like you can go to the lecturers. So, and you always have that base with Norland, that even once you've like throughout your course and once you've qualified, you can still come back to Norland, and it's a really lovely support system, and that's mainly why I chose to came to Norland. So yeah, the next slide please. The lagging slides return. So in terms of sewing, I came with a sort of basic knowledge of sewing, that I'd done odd bits but hadn't really had that much. And since coming to Norland, I brought my own sewing machine and sort of got more into it. And the lovely thing about sewing at Norland is that they can really sort of push you, that with my apron, as you can see there, that we're offered different things. So everyone completes the apron, but quite often Kate and Nicola have different projects that you can do alongside it and as well as it. So I made a little chef's hat there, which has been used by one of my charges, which is very cute. And that's the nice thing, that you can take these sort of sewing projects that you've made and either make them again for your charges or use the ones that you've made, which is really lovely. I've done the similar things with bunting that we completed and hand sewing skills. And with COVID happening, as Lois did a Ziploc bag, instead we made a fabric friend. So I did a little elephant at the bottom. And this sort of, we used different scrap fabrics we could find, as obviously all the shops and charity shops where we'd normally get fabrics from weren't open. So we were able to do that, and that's all hand sewn. And hopefully, as we're moving back to going to lectures sort of after half term, I think we're going to start using the machines a bit more. Obviously, like cleaning them on between, and you know, Norland have been really good with that. All the tables, and we always have like antibac wipes, and everything gets wiped down at the end of each like contact points, and it's a different way of doing it, but we've still been able to get the same sort of course out of it, and we've made little adjustments and stuff like that to make it work. It's similar, as Lois was saying, with the food and nutrition, that sewing works in a similar way, that we get a sort of brief or shown how to do it. Outside of Norland, I've also done the sewing project that we did for the local hospice, where we made quilts. So that's me holding one of the quilts that we made together. It was an optional sort of extra that you could do. So we stayed after lectures and did that together, and we all worked doing different patterns. And I think they're working towards hopefully us being able to come in and give them to the hospice, but with COVID, that's obviously changed what we can and can't do. And then on the next slide, I've also got some other things I've done outside of Norland. So sort of taking the skills that I've used from Norland, I've been able to make a smock dress, which is the first picture on the left. Funny enough, I found out that Norland students used to make a smock dress. And when it got shared, it was lovely seeing all the different previous Norland and all the Norlanders talking about when they made the smock dresses. And that's something that I never, before starting Norland, I just wouldn't have dreamed that I'd be able to make that. And now I feel confident enough that I can take those patterns, especially as we're making our own patterns with the fabric friend, that, you know, with that support, we've been able to do that. So that's been really lovely. And then I've got some leggings that I've made for one of my charges, which families always love. It's nice that you can give them something handmade and say, you know, I made this. And even if it's not quite perfect and all of that, it's still something really treasured and nice that they could have. And then the final pictures, some masks, are very COVID friendly sewing tasks that I've done, that I made some masks to raise some money for a charity that's quite close to my heart. And that's another thing that Norland's helped me make. So that's been really nice. So I'll just talk about my food and nutrition next. So these are some of the different things that I've made with food and nutrition. They follow a similar sort of recipe book that they slightly change and alter. So the pancakes, the smoothie, and then the one above, the weaning food, that's one of the first, I think it may have been the second or first, I can't quite remember, project we did, like assessment in first year. And then some of you can see the lovely plates, and that's another thing that's really nice at Norland, is that they have all the ingredients there. So in the food and nutrition block, when you come in, they have the ingredients that you can have. So it's all there and sort of ready for you. And then they have these plates and nice little bits that is sort of given. I know we were saying, talking the other day about how we were going to buy some of the things we've seen at Norland for charges and families. And it's really nice that we've been able to develop these skills and have all these extra things. Like, we always joke that food and nutrition, it's always a good day when you have food and nutrition, because you come home and you have like an amazing meal, like the chicken stuffed with quinoa and chorizo, and it was all very fancy, and we come home and it's like the difference between what we normally have. But it has definitely made me a much better cook, because I was much of a baker, but I feel a lot more confident now, and I've been able to make some of the things we've made in food and nutrition for placement families, and so that's been really nice. And they've sort of taken their recipes, so it's sort of branched out from just food and nutrition. And so next slide, please. So here's some pictures from when I've done the different things. So the terry toweling nappies, something that I hadn't really heard much of, not coming from a sort of childcare background and all of that, that I had no idea how to do it at all. But it's quite a traditional thing, and I feel like with Norland there's lots of small little hints and how to do things that it's just, you know, how to top and tail and stuff like that, but the ways you can fold towels and how you can get a little hood, like the picture I have in the corner, that was something that I hadn't even thought about doing. And obviously you can get those towels with hoods, but Elizabeth showed us how to do it, that you can get that, and it's such a nice thing now that I do it, and I'm like, oh. And it's like little things like that. And then I've also got a picture when we did a hand washing masterclass, which very appropriate now, that was before COVID in first year. That was obviously my hands before I'd washed them, but it was the UV light, there's the gel you put on and then you wash to check that, you know, areas that you've missed. So there's quite a few spots where everyone was like, oh, and stuff like that. But we've also had masterclasses on sleep as well. So Debbie's come in, and all the different lecturers that have different specialities can come in and do lectures based on where their levels of expertise is in, which has been helpful with my current charges, that we've been working through some sleep problems. So we've sort of been working them out, and I think it's going well. And then we've also got our portfolio that we have to do by the end of second year. And a lot of the things are sort of checking off things that you naturally do. So like storytelling and stuff like that, but it also provides sort of, you can collect evidence together of different things you've done, like supporting a child through a transition, which the degree obviously shows you and sort of tells you how to, like, different strategies you can go about it, but the portfolio really gives, and placements give you a really good chance to sort of work on that and actually reflect on it and think, oh, okay, that worked, and or I'd change it a bit like that. So it's been really helpful in sort of building up my knowledge base from not having too much childcare sort of experience before Norland, because I'd helped out a couple nurseries and helped out with like babysitting, but I hadn't had any sort of loads of placement hours. Like when I first came, I had a bit of an imposter syndrome, like, oh, I don't have enough experience, but now I feel confident in myself. So yeah, that's my experience.
Fabulous. I want to apply and I work here. Thank you so much. That was absolutely fantastic. Thank you, Kate. Thank you, Lois. I want to eat all the food and I want to play with all the things that you make as well. It looks amazing. I'm so glad you're obviously enjoying what you're doing, which is really, really lovely. And you can tell that the way you come across. So thank you very, very much for that. We do have questions. If you have any more questions, please add them in the Q&A box. But I have got a few questions, if that's okay, and you're happy to take them, everybody. So I'll start with Lucy, if that's okay with you first. Are placements still carrying on whilst in lockdown?
So we have been subject to parameters just as everybody else has during lockdown, but we have been doing something called virtual placements, where essentially you're giving fictional scenarios based on real life events that you have to respond to practice those paperwork elements and that kind of thing. Of course, we're not saying it's the same thing as spending time with actual children, but it has kept those skills sharp throughout. Kate and Lois, did you do the virtual placements? Do you want to talk a bit about it?
Yeah, so we did a virtual placement most recently with a 4-week one where we got emailed daily scenarios of, we sort of had a case study based on a real family that before the lockdown happened, that they'd been able to go in to a family with triplets, and then they put in a 6-month-old as well, sort of cover all bases and learn lots of different things. And then each day we got emailed scenarios. I'm trying to think which ones we got, but they were all like practical things that would happen, because with my family that I'm with at the moment, they were like, oh, what sort of scenarios you get, like are they actually ones that happen? But they're all sort of useful things, like, oh, you're out in the park and this happens. And so yeah, that's been really good. But in October, I think it was, when there was that sort of middle, it was like a smaller lockdown, I was able to go with a family, a live-in family then. So there's sort of opportunities depending on, like, Norland's constantly reviewing it to make sure. I'm not sure if you have anything to add, Lois.
Yeah, so following on from what Kate said, the virtual placements were actually really useful, especially for things like Kate said about resolving conflict and getting scenarios through email. Actually doing them in the virtual placement was a lot less pressure, because you could then send your response back to the placement team and they could say, okay, well, these things are really brilliant that you said, they would really work. And then they could say, oh, well, perhaps you could change it this way, and give you a lot of advice. So the virtual placement, although it was really upsetting for me to start with, because I was meant to go on a 6-week residential, and then the lockdown happened, so I couldn't go. I did get to do my residential in the end, but in the interim, it was really important to have those virtual placements. I've now got 6 weeks worth of meal plans that I can use infinitely. I've got 6 weeks worth of activity plans, morning and afternoon, and I've gained those experiences by having those real life scenarios come in. and having the weekly reflections and thinking about how you plan your day and things like that is really important. And although, like Lucy said, it doesn't compare to having a practical real life experience and working with children, it's a really good alternative. And then, like I said, I did get to do that residential placement. I managed it in September, and I'm about to go on placement again, which is this placement's my choice because it's for my dissertation, which will be another residential for me. So it hasn't completely limited placements at all. In fact, it's probably made us a lot more equipped on the paperwork side of things and on the knowledgeable side of things before going out onto NQN and placements and things like that.
Thank you very much, both. It's just something that we've been reviewing constantly as the guidelines change. As many of you may know, nannies are now exempt from, what am I trying to say? Isolating. They can go into families and things like that. So we are constantly reviewing and seeing how we can ensure that our students are getting the best training that they can. And I'm talking about all the time. We even met on New Year's Eve to discuss how we were going to come back in September because there was a sudden change. So it's something that we feel very passionately about. And of course, we hope that for the next September cohort, we're not even going to think about it because these vaccines are going to sort it out and everyone's going to do as they're told and stay home. That's the plan, of course.
Yes, that would be lovely. We do get quite a lot of questions about placement, so I think potentially we're going to probably do a full Norland Unwrapped session just on placement because it's such a huge part of our qualification. And it's such an integral part of coming to Norland. So I think probably the next session we'll do a whole section on placement. So obviously we'll keep listening to those questions as you're coming in. I do have a lovely question actually that I'm going to direct this to Kate, if that's okay, first of all, and then perhaps Lois could answer as well. Is I am currently in year 10. and it'd be an absolute dream to attend Norland. How should I start to build up my experience that will help me when it comes to the time to apply? Thank you, which is lovely. So Kate, over to you. What did you kind of gather before you came?
Yeah, so before I came, I helped out at a local nursery. So in between my college, so in terms of when I was in secondary school, I hadn't actually really had, apart from odd babysitting, I hadn't had that much. But the real thing with Norland is a passion, and sort of you've got to show your love for childcare. So whether that's through, you know, if you can get a place, a nursery, like helping out maybe odd hours or odd babysitting, it's just basically anything you can get to sort of develop and build up that skills and make sure you know that's what you want to do. But yeah, that's all. Just try and get as much as you can. Any opportunities, just say yes and go for it, really. And
Lois, what about you?
I definitely say, well, coming from somebody who has quite a lot of childcare experience and prior to coming to Norland, if it's something you really wanted to do, then perhaps look into pursuing a course like I did in the cash level 3 in early years education. I really enjoyed it. It wasn't essential for my first year, but it really, really helped me because I already had a basic knowledge, and it meant I could help my peers as well. I had a lot of friends like Kate who'd come from an A-level background and needed my support in our own time. So they'd be like, oh, can I just ask you a question about this? And it really allowed people to lean on me and also opened me up to a lot of childcare experience. I'd already done 1,000 hours of placement before I'd come to Norland through my cash level 3. I'd done a lot of babysitting for friends and family. It's also important to point out that I was under the impression that I had to be extremely academic to come to Norland. I have to achieve all A stars and I'd have to have this exemplary GCSE record and never have had a C in my life. But actually, Norland doesn't have an extremely high GCSE requirement. It's a C and above, I think, still. I'm not sure what that is in numbers. I think, is it a 5 or a 6? But for me, that worked really well because I really struggled with maths, and I thought, oh, I didn't get an A in my maths, and I'm never going to be able to go to Norland. But actually, I've got a lot of it was my passion for children and all my experience and the want to be at Norland that shone through. It wasn't that I achieved high in English or anything like that, providing I got the basics in terms of my GCSEs, and I could convey how much I desperately wanted to come to Norland and work with children and make a difference. That was all that mattered. I actually have a few friends who didn't have any childcare experience. If you're this early in the game and you can get some under your belt, then that's brilliant. But I've got friends who had never changed a nappy, never made a bottle, never held a newborn before they came to Norland. So it's not absolutely essential if it's something you really want to do.
Fantastic. Wonderful, thank you very much. We've got another lovely question. I've had an offer for 2022, congratulations. Are there any books and sources that I could read in preparation which would benefit me before starting? Can I direct that one at Lucy, please?
Yes. So one of my favourite books, and it got me really excited about just general learning really to do with the early years, is Children's Minds by Margaret Donaldson, which is a beautiful book. You can read it from cover to cover. It's not like a textbook or anything like that. It's beautiful, and it will get you thinking about children from their perspective, because it's about how children are individual, that they grow and develop at their own rate. So that's the kind of like really lovely fluffy one. The other thing you probably want to familiarise yourself with is the early years foundation stage in September. Yeah, everyone's going, yeah. Which is the statutory framework at the moment. However, it is changing in September 2020 to Development Matters. Do not confuse that with Development Matters 2012. So if you Google it and say most recent Development Matters, it will come up with the most recent one, and you can get familiar with that, because that's what you're going to be using in practice. You're going to be using it to analyse observations. You will be using it a lot. And I know students who come from A level sometimes find the transition quite difficult because they're not familiar with that document. So that's probably the main one. Yeah.
Fantastic. This is a question for Lois, actually, because you were talking about earlier that you are living with a family. How did you find a family to live with while you were studying?
So I did the first 2 years living in a student house. It didn't work out for me, and my finances were really stretched, and I also paid for my fees monthly and things. So to find a family, I put it in, we have set group chats, so that's the most current 3 sets that go attending Norland at the time. I said, I'm looking to live with a family. Has anybody got any recommendations? They know anybody who's looking for somebody? And one of my friends messaged me and she said, oh, I'm on a placement and I'm actually working for a family who were thinking about getting an au pair, but actually they prefer to have an Norland student. And I live with that family. I do childcare instead of paying my rent at the moment, so that works really well for me. And I had an interview with them, like an informal meeting sort of thing. And I got quite a few families I could go to, but I ended up sticking with this one. It made a really brilliant decision, and it really works for me. Perhaps not for everybody, but certainly wish I'd have done it sooner. But yeah, if you put it into the Norland group, or you can email, you can send a generic email to Norland and say, I really want to live with a family. Do you have anybody on your books who's looking for a student to live in with them? Has anybody expressed an interest? And then people like me who are already living with families often put posts on and say, I'm leaving next year, or there's a position opening. My family are looking for people to replace me, sort of. So it's actually really easy to find a family to live with, because once you're already in the network, you've got friends and friends of friends who know families all through Norland that can provide you a really reputable reference.
Fantastic, wonderful. I do have a question about the interview process, actually. Are there any tips or advice you could give regarding an interview that I have coming up?
Who would you like to take that, Kate?
Can I ask Kate that, if that's okay?
Yeah, so sort of in the interview, when I first came, I was so scared. I was like, oh no, they're just going to ask me questions I don't know, and like I'm not going to know how to answer them. But the most reassuring thing about the interviews is, you know, it's not as scary as you think they are. They're like more relaxed than you think. That I personally did a group presentation where I think it was about 4 students all together, that we all talked about our experience we had with children and why we wanted to come to Norland. And then after that, we swapped with another group of people, and we each went to an individual lecturer, so the different people doing the interview process. And I had it with us now F&N lecturer Penny, and it was really lovely that she kept reassuring me. She was like, it's fine, you know, you're doing well. And it was more of a chat and sort of questions, like going through it. But as I said before, the most important things just the passion for working with children and you know, why you want to come to Norland and why you think that's the right path for you. But the most important thing is don't stress. It's not as bad as you think it is.
Fantastic, brilliant. I do have a question here about, I'll just make a comment about international students. With regards to obviously international students, because obviously due to Brexit, we now obviously class EU students as international students. So we are in the process of applying for licenses with to gain international students. So watch this space. It will be available, more information on our website. So if you do have any questions about if you're an international student, you can always email our admissions team as well. So admissions@norland.ac.uk, and they'll be able to give you the most up-to-date information. So you're more than welcome to contact them. I'm going to ask, who should I ask now? Let's have a think. I'm going to ask Lois this one, actually. What are your plans? Obviously, you mentioned that you want to, you know, be a nanny and then potentially open up your nursery. Would you say that Norland offers you those opportunities to kind of not necessarily be a nanny? You can go on to other things and other areas. What type of things would you be looking to do moving forward?
100%. I'd say that Norland make you very aware that you're not just a nanny, you're learning to be an early years practitioner. You have a myriad of opportunities open to you from once you've got this degree. It's also an early years degree. You do get alongside it. So if you wanted to then go and train to be a teacher, for example, afterwards, you could do that. You could do PGCE and go and do that. I definitely want to do my maternity nursing course, which Norland offer, which is a paid for course, to get me an extra qualification, so I've got something else I can do alongside nannying or instead of nannying in between. I'd like to think I'd nanny for a really long time, and then after that, perhaps when I have my own family, I would like to look into opening a nursery inspired by one of the placements I went on. I never thought I'd want to open a nursery, and I went to a placement. I absolutely loved it, and I decided that I wanted to provide the opportunities that that placement had given to the children in my local area, because I didn't even know nurseries that amazing even existed, which is really nice for me, because if I hadn't come to Norland, I wouldn't have known that I wanted to do that.
Fantastic. That's really
Okay, can I just add to that? Because I've just written an academic reference for a student from Set 37 who's gone on to do her PGCE just this week, and last week I got an email from a student saying they'd just been accepted on an MA at University College London in social justice, a reference that I'd written for her. So students definitely go on to do other things beyond nannying, and it's something that I would really sort of encourage you to do, because as you get older you just can't keep up as much.
I'll make you feel very well. We're running out of time very, very quickly, so I will ask one or two quick questions if that's okay. With regards to food and nutrition, obviously you mentioned about the supply. Do we pay for that? One of the questions is, do you pay for the food and nutrition supplies? Lois, Kate, do you want to pop in there?
It's completely funded for by the college, and when we're not in college, so like now, Norland have really kindly actually reimbursed us for our ingredients. So they I got sent recently £20. The food and nutrition team worked out how much it was going to cost, and every student was entitled to that money. But obviously in the normal circumstances, when we're coming into the college, Penny and Kate do an online delivery and they have everything there, and we don't have to pay for that.
Wonderful. Fantastic. And one last question, I think we're going to squeeze one in with regards to the first aid. Obviously, for your first aid training, at the end, do you get a certificate and do you need to keep it updated? Kate, if you want to answer that one.
Yeah, so we recently did our first aid that because of COVID, you do it in first year and then you do it again in third year to keep it updated, so you have it for the longest amount of time, because I think they last 3 years. Was it 3 years? 3 years. Yeah. So because of COVID, we ended up doing half of the first aid course online, and then when we were able to come back in person, we were able to do that first aid, the more practical skills with the dummies and all of the EpiPens and stuff like that. So yeah, you do.
Fantastic. I think really that's all we've got time for. We've literally run out of time. I'm so sorry. I would have tried to get through as many questions as I possibly can. I will look at all the questions that you've sent in. They've got some absolutely wonderful ones. So we'll try and put some sort of FAQs together. So we'll be able to answer those for you. Can I just say a huge thank you to Lucy, Kate and Lois for giving up their time to do this. I don't know about you guys out there, but I found it really, really interesting. And it was so lovely to hear from people with such enthusiasm. And thank you so much for your time, really, really appreciate it. So if you would like to have a look on our website, obviously you can follow us on social media. We've got, we are on Norland, we've got YouTube. Please have a look on there, there's lots and lots of videos for you. You can email me, it's kate.morgan@norland.ac.uk, or you can contact our admissions department if it's about specific questions that you need to ask. But in the meantime, I'd like to say thank you so much again to the panel. Have a safe evening, make sure everyone's safe and take care of yourself, and we'll hopefully see you at the next Norland Unwrapped session. So thank you very much, and we'll give you all a big wave. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.